We do live in, I don't know how it happened, but or I guess I do know how it happened, but we definitely live in dark times. The old thing that millennials, other people are growing up where their largest problem is who to defriend, that is not our world right now. We are facing crucial challenges to the very pillars of democracy, almost to the Enlightenment, I feel like, in the defense of science and rationality. This is getting medieval, the situation we're living in today. And therefore, I'm really grateful that everyone is here, turning out in person. I really believe that physical presence makes a big difference. And I'm going to spend the next 12 minutes or so, 11 now, talking about net neutrality. I'm going to talk about three things. First, what it is. I think you kind of might know that, but just in case. And why it matters more than ever. A little bit about what's going on, and of course, in a conference like this, what you can do. So, net neutrality, you might be like, didn't we already win that fight? What is going on? Especially in DC. DC tends to be like Star Wars movies. If things keep rebooting, there needs to be, I don't know why, but the same problems keep coming back, whether it's healthcare or whatever. And net neutrality is proving very much the same. There was, in case you haven't been following this carefully, a net neutrality rule that was put in place in 2016. And I want to say that the people, probably a lot of people in this room, had a major role in making net neutrality rules strong. There were more than 4 million people who personally commented on the FCC's websites and persuaded the then chairman of the FCC to switch how he did things. I was talking with people involved, and they had never seen anything like it. There is a lot that armies of angry geeks can do, I will tell you. And that was one of them. And I witnessed it firsthand because it was not going to be that way, and it changed. So the rule was put in place. Unfortunately, this little thing called a presidential election happened. And if you haven't been paying attention, as Andrew said, it's pretty easy to sort of slip out of paying attention. There's just so much going on. It's one of the challenges of our age. You almost need the outrage for 10 people to be concerned about the environment, the relaunching of the war on drugs, but also net neutrality. Somewhere under this cloud of chaos, the FCC of the Trump administration, which is chaired by a former Verizon employee named Ajit Pai, has decided that they might as well take a weed whacker, as the phrase is, to net neutrality. So they want to gut the authority that gave the agencies the power to do net neutrality. Now, I think most of the people in the room have some vague sense of what net neutrality is, but let me, just in case, this is a PDF, you guys got this, but just in case, I'll reintroduce it. On the one hand, you have this thing called the internet, invented in the 60s and 70s, non-commercial from its origins, that's changed a little, obviously, but imbued with this idea that there should be a universal network, one really that left the power to the ends of the network to do what they might with a connection between all people. In some ways, the first medium worthy of the name. So that's the internet, always somewhat fragile, never perfect, an experiment in free speech, an experiment in open innovation, an experiment in what happens when you let people communicate openly with each other. On the other side of this situation, you have the phone and cable industry and their broadband product, in which they have a very different set of concerns. From the cable's point of view, the best thing about broadband is it makes a ton of money. In fact, you might not know this, but it costs less than $5 maybe to provide broadband service per month. It's sold for about $60 to $80. It's the only company I know has such a good deal going is maybe Starbucks. It is, the profit margin on broadband is at minimum 95 and sometimes 99%. So this is an incredibly lucrative product. But from the cable industry's perspective, it isn't making enough money as it is. it could make more money, and that's the problem with net neutrality. I should put that in a little more perspective. The problem for cable is that people don't like cable television anymore. They've noticed that they're paying for 300 channels and are watching maybe one or two, and those are the premium channels. They prefer, especially young people, but also increasing numbers of older people, they prefer just to watch what they want to watch, which doesn't sound that crazy. And this is a massive impediment to the cable industry business model, which has been dependent on people reliably forking over, $100 to $150 a month forever. So, where do you go? I know we can make more money on broadband. How do we make more money on broadband? Oh, look at that company, Google. Look at that company, Netflix. Look at even Wikipedia. Look at all these bloggers. They ain't paying us a cent. People are just communicating with them, working with them, and we're not making any money. Something is wrong. So the fundamental, at the core of net neutrality, is this idea that broadband providers, cable and phone companies, would like more money out of the internet. They would just like to make more money. And there's another way they'd like more money, which I think is also relevant to this discussion. Consumers. Maybe you're paying $40 a month, maybe you're paying $50. I think we'd like that number to be something more like 80 or 90. So what are all the ways we can make that happen? Well, I think you're going to see these over the next 5 or 6 years. The pressure is all in that direction. But net neutrality gets in the way of making your cable bill higher in certain ways. One of which is to try to take the strategy the airlines have done very well with, which is to make basic service absolutely miserable, to make it impossible or useless to have the basic level broadband service. Maybe it will only, for example, be an email service, or maybe email and the basic web or something. So to try to segment, change, turn broadband into something that looks a lot more like an airplane in terms of its service categories. These are the kind of things, or these are the kind of motivations behind net neutrality. So I think it's important, the basic net neutrality rule, no blocking, no discrimination, treating all content the same. And I think you can kind of inherently see by that it might be important, but let me just give you 2 or 3 reasons why it's particularly important right now. At the core of net neutrality is actually a hidden free speech principle. It allows speakers, frankly innovators, a kind of an opportunity to reach the people that they wouldn't have if they had to cut a deal with cable to do it otherwise. It has allowed companies like Wikipedia, is a classic example, nonprofit, founded on kind of wild ideas that if you ever propose it as a business model, people would say, that sounds like the worst idea I've ever heard. You're going to have an encyclopedia that everyone can edit, but you can put it up there. They experimented, and it's one of the most popular sites in the world, and has been there and is still healthy and going years later. That kind of experimentation, that kind of effort to create speech products and ideas is what is protected by a free speech principle. And I think it's telling that countries like China, other autocratic regimes, Russia, do not respect net neutrality because they would be able to block some sites and upgrade other ones. In the United States, we used to have less of that at the public, governmental level, but we certainly have it in the private level. The cable and phone companies have never been interested in anything that might compete with them, and they've always been interested in anything that they could turn another dime out of. I don't entirely blame them. They're under incredible pressure from their stock shareholders and investors. They exist to make profit, but that doesn't mean that the most important thing in this country is that cable companies make as much money as they can. It doesn't seem to me a principle that even stacks up against the principle of free speech, namely the maximization of cable and phone company profit. They are making a lot of money as it is, and they don't need any more. So, where does this fight go? Well, I'll say a few things about that. One of the challenges is with so much stuff going on, a new outrage every day, the fact that the White House has been transformed into a reality show, which would be really humorous if it wasn't real. which has somehow rendered satire obsolete, that the people in government don't even know this is going on. You know, the Congress is only vaguely aware that something is going on. I don't know if the White House even has had it enter their head, whether they understand it. I don't know either. But there's this thing going on which is primarily to benefit the cable and phone companies. And the only way to make it stop is to make it clear that it's a massive political liability for this administration and for the Republican Party for it to be tied to the destruction of net neutrality and the open internet. I have met many people who are personally passionate about the open internet, who care about freedom of speech, who care about the right to innovate. I have never met anyone who's not a cable lobbyist passionate about getting rid of net neutrality. Giving cable companies the right to block things and raise people's bills are not the kind of things that get people to win elections or people are excited about. So the key is making it clear that this policy is wrong. It's one of the most successful industrial policies the United States has had over the last 30 or 40 years. It actually started during the W. Bush administration. So it's not this clear Democratic Republican thing. It is an enrichment plan, as I said, for cable and phone companies, and we can make that clear. Now, you are people who are already involved because you're here. So this is not just an issue about you learning something. What do you do if you really want to have an impact? Well, I'll say two things, and I'm running out of time. The first is there is a major day of action planned on July 12th, the Internet Day of Action. And if you go to the web and you find out what it's about, you will see that we are going to show the power of tech to resist the destruction of the open internet on July 12th. And it has been a coalition built which is united and will do a good job. And I also encourage you to take the small steps of commenting on the FCC's website and just spreading the word personally. I will tell you that I thought it would never happen before. We have already surpassed the 4 million people who commented last time. We were at 5 million comments and counting, despite robot attacks. I am confident we are going to win the day because in the end, this issue we are right about. Thank you very much.